Good morning and good afternoon. Thank you for joining us today for the Smartlogic webinar, Empowering Enterprise Data with Semaphore 4. My name is Ann Lapkin. I manage strategy and marketing for Smartlogic, and with me today are Sarah Mercure, Senior Consultant and Information Scientist with Smartlogic, and Rick Ahlander, VP of Professional Services, and they will be talking to you about the exciting new features of our new release, Semaphore 4. This presentation is taking place in broadcast mode. You are all muted. If you would please put questions in the question box on the GoToWebinar console. We will be answering those questions at the end of the session, and any questions that we don't get to, we will answer by email following the session. So what are we going to talk about today? We're going to talk about what is Semaphore. Many of you will already know what Semaphore is, but it's probably worthwhile for those who don't just to spend a minute or two talking a little bit about what Semaphore is. We're going to talk about the highlights. What are the new things in Semaphore 4 that are making our customers so excited? We'll talk about several of the beta customers who are seeing significant game-changing advantages, and then we'll go into a little more detail on the changes in Semaphore 4 Ontology Manager and Semaphore 4 Classification Server, and then we will get to questions. So what is Semaphore? Semaphore, simply said, is a content intelligence platform. It works with the content management applications in your enterprise. It works with enterprise search. It works with business intelligence applications. It works with business process management systems in order to do several things. Model your problem domain so that you get very, very specific contextual information about the unstructured content in your enterprise. It allows you to interpret that model to create rules which then allow you to describe the information in the enterprise with complete and accurate metadata. It allows you to analyze enterprise information, both structured and unstructured, and it allows you to visualize the results so that you can actually make business decisions, do predictive analytics, and a whole host of other things. The key idea here is that you are able to manage your enterprise information under a single consistent semantic umbrella, including that 80% of the information which is unstructured and semi-structured, and which is very, very difficult for machines to deal with and manage and understand. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Rick to talk a little bit more about the exciting transformation that we see in Semaphore 4.
Thanks, Ann, and welcome everyone to the webinar. Those of you who have used Semaphore in the past are already familiar with the interface of Ontology Manager version 3. It's a freestanding Windows FAT application which is deployed on an individual desktop. This application is a powerful, controlled vocabulary ontology editor which has served us well. However, as interfaces, network infrastructures, and team workflow has evolved, we answer the challenge. It is my pleasure to introduce to you Semaphore 4. The tool is now simply called the Semaphore Web Ontology Manager as it becomes part of our Workbench suite of ontology management tools. It has all the rich abilities of Semaphore 3 Ontology Manager, but it's web-based and built using a modern web UI. We already have many customers using this tool in our beta program, and I'm pleased to report it has been received well. In fact, most of these customers are already planning on pushing this tool into production. Now I'm going to highlight a few of the new features and improved features in Semaphore 4. First of all, it's web-based. This web-based management interface is brand new. It's simple, intuitive, and eliminates many of the common network hassles seen in version 3. Included in this release is full semantic web support. We built this new ontology management interface using W3C standards, which include but are not limited to RDF, RDF-S, SCAS, and SCAS-XL. The new interface is task-centric, allowing new workflow and lifecycle methodologies. It mimics the way teams work and allows new governance for both models and information scientists. Another great feature is the ability to link and use models together. Gone are the days when your models live in silos. Now they can become part of a much larger semantic ecosystem, leaving the concepts and vocabulary where they belong. Simply link to the authoritative source and use that linked data in your modeling. We've also vastly improved our classification, which now includes better natural language processing, entity extraction, and relationship discovery. I'll talk about this more later. Now I would like to talk about a few of our customers who are already taking advantage of the Semaphore 4 capabilities. The first customer I'll highlight is already using Semaphore 4. This is a large multinational biopharmaceutical company. The customer was using Semaphore 3 but was limited by having to convert diverse vocabulary sources into a single format. They also were not able to utilize model linking to make use of rich external ontologies. Now they can take rich vocabularies and put them to work in practical situations by reusing ontologies which are published in different formats, in different sources, and even managed independently. With the new task-based methodology, they know what step is being performed for what system. This allows for better governance and improved organization. Combining internal vocabularies and external public ontologies with enterprise knowledge, they are able to automate workflows and accurately tag the results of scientific research using classification, enabling effective knowledge reuse. I also want to mention that this customer is a member of the Allotrope Foundation, which aims to build a common framework and language by which pharmaceutical companies can share and exchange information. Semaphore 4 is playing a critical role in enabling this vision. The next customer I'll talk about is a media and publishing company. This company is a diversified international media enterprise that has disparate repositories of data housed around the globe. Each repository holds information about some facet of their assets. They built a semantic-based metadata hub to provide fast and flexible search across all of their information. For example, a film will have audio tracks dubbed in many languages. Marketing material will have been created for multiple markets, and merchandise produced which can be sold in various outlets, etc. When the company decides to market the film in another country like France or Brazil, they can use this system to discover what assets are already produced, saving them time and money. Prior to this system, many duplicate efforts were taking place, causing lots of waste. Semaphore is the core system that manages the control of vocabulary, which drives the search experience. Now with Semaphore 4, they can centralize their semantic modeling and utilize WC3 media ontology standards as the basis for their model. As these disparate data sources are ingested, Semaphore can automatically map the information into the core model and expand the semantic graph with new triples. Since the data is stored in a triple store, the data can be explored and new relationships can be discovered, providing a fresh perspective on the information. In addition, since the data is modeled in standardized ways, downstream systems can query and utilize the information without a volume of documentation describing the schema and access methods. This also reduces cost and complexity. Now I'd like to give the floor to Sarah, who will tell us more about the new Semaphore 4 Web Ontology Manager.
Thanks, Rick. So what you see here is a screenshot of the dashboard in Semaphore Workbench. And if you're familiar with previous versions of Ontology Manager, the improvement to user experience should be readily apparent by looking at this workspace. Upon login, you see not one, but all of the models you have access to shown here in each of the green boxes in the panel. You can also see at a glance the number of tasks ongoing for each model, the number of users who have access to work on each model, as well as the last data was edited. So you can see you're presented with a lot of information. Really, you're given a solid overview of each model just by opening the dashboard. Further, this is an improvement over previous versions because you don't have to close down a model in order to open or import another. Because the interface is web-based, you can open the dashboard, see what's there, create a new model, or continue working on a previously existing one. So when you choose model and click on the appropriate box, you're taken to the modeling panel. In this case, we're looking at the ISP model, a generic model created by Smartlogic. Right in front, in the dark gray, you see that you're able to quickly create a new task. To the right, in the white box, you can see that there's a test model that has one user and 3,064 concepts that was last edited on July 21st. It shows user information, so you have an idea of who created and worked on that model. In the gray bar to the left, you can see that you can choose to edit the IPSI master model. And again, you can see information about that model in terms of users and concepts. If you click on the gray box labeled Create a New Task, you are given a pop-up window where you can create and name your new task like so. So this new interface allows easy, natural collaboration and model approval processes, and also allows you to avoid versioning nightmares that we've all experienced when you kind of pass around files from modeler to modeler. And your ability to create different versions of model in a non-production environment allows you to play with the model and make changes or imports of things like existing public domain models risk-free. So this is a screenshot of our IPSI model. You can see, so if you click on the IPSI master model in the top left-hand corner of the previous slide, this is what you would see. To the left are all of the top-level concepts in your model. Next, we'll choose a sub-concept. In this case, we've chosen the building control services concept. And when you click on that concept, this is what you would see. Again, this new interface is extremely user-friendly and allows you to see where the concept sits within the greater model at a quick glance. Another useful feature in Semaphore 4 is that when the master model is updated, these changes are pushed to all of the task-based models. So all of your test models and everything that you're working on to improve the master model are up to date and working from the same base model. So you can see in the building control services, just to walk you around this panel a little bit, you can see the concept class. You can see information about this concept, including the preferred labels, the alternative labels, the metadata and how it's applied, and then related concepts, including broader and narrower concepts. So you can add and move things around within this panel, so it's very easy to use. So now I'm going to turn it back to Rick to talk about classification server.
Thanks, Sarah. Now I'm going to highlight some of the changes and enhancements we've made to the Semaphore 4 classification server. To start with, we improved the natural language processing and part-of-speech tagging. This allows us to increase the accuracy of the classification process. We also greatly enhanced our entity extraction and fact extraction capabilities. We are able to extract many more types of entities with a higher rate of precision. For example, now we can discover social media tags, extract geography information, and even determine the sentiment of a given sentence. In addition, we've expanded our rules to include new fact extraction capability. This allows us to extract facts with high accuracy with a smaller modeling effort. Even more exciting is that we now have the ability to see the relationships between entities in a document and group them together. Let me give you an example. We have a customer who uses Semaphore to extract information from financial documents. These documents often contain tabular data like a list of shareholders, their names, country of origin, date of birth, percentage of ownership, among other things. With Semaphore 3, we could extract all the information, but we didn't know, for example, that David Smith was from the US and owned 6% of the company, or that Jane Jackson was from the UK and owned 15%. Well, that's not completely true. We were able to do that, but it was very difficult and required a fair amount of extra modeling and post-processing. But now with Semaphore 4, not only can we extract these facts, but we know, for example, that Rick Peterson is from Australia and was born on March 15, 1965 and owns 21% of the company. What's even better, with Semaphore 4, all of this information is returned natively from classification server and RDF industry standard output. The modeling effort to discover and group this information is now easy or easier with the new built-in rule constructs. Next, one of the advantages of having the ontology natively in a semantic graph combined with the new capabilities of the semantic enhancement server, customers can now use powerful semantic tools to visualize and analyze information. These tools help the enterprise drive predictive analytics and business intelligence. This graph comes from a case study called Slips, Trips, and Falls. You can find this on our website. The case study highlights one of the main challenges enterprises face today, which is the inability to use unstructured information in predictive analytics and business intelligence. For example, if 80% of the information in enterprise resides in unstructured sources, the remaining 20% that can be leveraged leaves your analysis severely compromised and compromises the quality of the results. What this graph represents are doctor's notes, drug interactions, and patient records from visiting nurses and social workers, which is sourced mostly from unstructured information. And they exist in different silos. However, now with the power of Semaphore 4, we have the ability to utilize that remaining 80%, and we can, for example, accurately predict which patients are at risk of falling, allowing measures preventing injuries. Now I'll give the floor back to Anne, who will talk more about why all of this matters.
What it basically comes down to is metadata. The only reason that any of this matters is because our systems are not working properly. Our content management systems are not living up to their promise. Our enterprise search systems are not returning the results that we actually need. Our business applications are unable to utilize the information without human intervention because we don't have exact, consistent, complete, and accurate metadata. Because what we've all discovered is that there is no metadata fairy who runs around sprinkling metadata all over the information that we have. We have to get that in some way. So when you have metadata, you can actually look at all of the content that you have in your enterprise, that 80% of information which is unstructured and semi-structured, and you can figure out How much of that information is actually valuable? How much of it is actually completed signed contracts as opposed to early drafts? How much of it is actually notes on decisions that were taken in meetings as opposed to random scribbles from someone who attended? Most of the studies that have been done over the last 15 years have said two things. Number one, unstructured and semi-structured information is about 80 to 85% of the information in the enterprise, and only about 25 to 35% of it is actually valuable. The rest of it just takes up space and creates a potential litigation or regulatory risk. And even worse, the content that is valuable is not necessarily where it should be. So by auditing your content, auditing your information, you can actually figure out what you should keep, what you should throw away, and where things that you should keep should actually go. You can more intelligently archive and migrate your content. You can actually, when you're moving from a collection of enterprise content management systems and file shares to some universal all singing, all dancing content management system, instead of taking all of the garbage with you and trying to sort it out later, you can actually concentrate on identifying and moving the valuable things and make your governance much more effective as a result. You can secure sensitive content. We have any number of customers who use Semaphore to identify personally identifying information which is subject to export control, intellectual property and trade secrets, in order to be able to make sure that those things are properly secured and that regulatory and litigation risk is reduced and competitive advantage is increased. You can also make your records management much more effective. Most records management systems right now rely on the superficial metadata like date of creation, author, and title in order to determine what to do with a particular piece of information. By using complete, accurate, and consistent metadata, you can actually do your records management based on what the information asset is actually about. You can drive workflows and case management based on content. In one of the examples that Rick was talking about before, the financial services company, the process of going through all of the documentation that a client was required to give to a bank in order to comply with the Know Your Customer and anti-money laundering regulations required a huge amount of human effort. They were able to reduce that effort by over 50% by using an automated process to increase their efficiency and reduce their risk. You can easily find and discover information and expertise. IDC estimates that knowledge workers spend about 20% of their time looking for the information that they need to do their jobs. What that means is that in order for a company to operate at 100% capacity, they need 120% of staff. So being able to accurately describe all of your information in a way that allows people to access what they need is incredibly powerful. In addition to that, you can augment your business intelligence to answer questions that you could not answer before. Most of the human intelligence of the enterprise is locked away in the content. And classic business intelligence techniques can't get at that information. Sure, you can dump it all into a NoSQL document database, and you can do some keyword searches and so on, but you have no concept of the context of the information, the context in which it was created, the context in which it's being used, or the relationships that exist within a particular information asset that are critically important to understanding how it should be used. And in order to do that, you need to be able to extract that information in a fashion which is complete and consistent with the model of your problem domain in order to be able to get the answers that you're looking for. So for example, you can answer questions like, how many of my customers who have balances of over $100,000 have written me a letter of complaint in the last 6 months, and how angry were they really? Right now, in order to do that, you would have to go and extract from your transaction system a list of all the customers that have balances of over $100,000, and then you would have to have humans go to the system where the complaint letters are stored to evaluate each and every complaint letter to figure out whether A, is that person on the list, and B, are they really angry? Are they moderately angry? Are they just kind of peeved, or are they just complaining for the sake of complaining? And you can harmonize your data. In the example that Rick used of the international media company, they were able to create an information hub that brought all of the information from all of their disparate systems, both inside and outside the enterprise, because they include also information from partners, in a fraction of the time that it would have taken them to build a data mart, and with a fraction of the cost. And they can flexibly add new concepts as new assets are created, new versions are created, without having to go in and do massive amounts of modeling and changing to a data mart, which, you know, by definition is fit for single purpose and somewhat brittle. And with that, I think we'll throw the floor open to questions. We have quite a number here. So let me start at the beginning. The first question, the one that's been asked about 57 times already, is when is this going to be available? So the answer to that is that it will be generally available in late August. We are in the late stages of beta testing now with a number of customers. And another question that's been asked, and Rick, I'm going to give this one to you, is what is the upgrade process? How difficult is it to upgrade?
Well, it's actually pretty straightforward. There will be two ways that you can go. We will have a hosted version or in the cloud of Semaphore 4, which you can subscribe to. Otherwise, it can be installed basically in your network infrastructure. It runs inside of a web server like Tomcat. And in order to migrate your model into Semaphore 4 is pretty simple. You have to upgrade your version of Semaphore 3 Ontology Manager to the latest version. And once you do that, you have the ability to export the model in Turtle, an RDF Turtle, and then you can import that directly into Semaphore 4 and you're off and going. It's not too difficult.
Okay, another question that got asked a couple of times is, since it's now web-based, will people using Macs be able to use the product? And the answer to that question is yes, people using Macs will be able to use the product. People using iPads will be able to use the product, though why you would actually want to manage your ontology from your iPad, I'm not entirely sure. But fundamentally, it is browser-based now, which means pretty much universal delivery. Another question that was asked, and Sarah, this one's for you. The Ontology Manager interface only shows terms and relationships plus a couple of other things. Do you still have properties and the multiple types of notes like scope notes? Where are those? And where are the controls on whether or not something stems or is an exact phrase?
So yes, you will be able to, it's actually easier to add notes and scope notes and different kinds of notes in this version. Let's see, I'm reading the question here. Where the controls are, we didn't show you at all the panels of the interface, and as you pull up those concepts, the controls on those things that you're asking about will be readily apparent there's not as much digging around in this version of Ontology Manager as there was in version 3. At least I don't think so. Like digging around to find the properties and that kind of thing, they're more readily apparent in this version.
Okay, thanks very much. Another question is, can fact extraction handle co-reference equivalencies? Rick, that one's for you, I think.
Yeah, I saw that question, and I don't know exactly what is meant here by co-reference equivalencies, but what we can do is we can group things together. So we can write rules in CS, for example, where we find various pieces of information in the document and we tell CS that those things that it found are related. And then when we produce the output, those things can be grouped together, and so we know that they co-occur, if you will.
Okay.
Hopefully that answers the question.
Mary, if that hasn't answered the question, we'll get with you after the broadcast and discuss this further. We have another question here. Can the enhanced relationship discovery work even without the triple store in a classification server? And will the model at the back end still have individual port numbers for each? Rick, can you take that?
Where is that question looking?
That question is about halfway down.
Okay. So the Ontology server is gone, if you will. The Ontology server was the server part of the Ontology Manager, which was the client. Now what we have is a triple store backend, which uses a more traditional HTTP interface and it basically works through Sparkle. And so all the interface between the web Ontology Manager and the backend is all done through more standard methods. So the answer is no. We no longer need a port for each model. That's gone, and it's all runs using standard ports.
Okay. Do you have a proprietary triple store or do you use a commercial product? Rick, that one's for you.
Okay. So we do not use a proprietary triple store at all. However, we do have one that we ship with, and it is
Jenna, I believe.
Jenna, that's right, from the Apache Foundation. And however, we will be certifying as well the product to run with other enterprise triple stores as well. So, and since we talk to the triple store in all standardized ways, we should be able to connect to most triple stores, assuming they support the level of the standard which we need.
Okay, additional questions. Has it been tested with a ledger graph?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's been tested officially with ledger graph, but I know that that is on our roadmap to do so.
So let's differentiate between a couple things here. Number one is the triple store that actually holds the models, which are expressed in triples. We ship the product with Jenna, but putting an additional triple store underneath that is, as Rick said, not really that much of an issue. The output of classification, the RDF triples that are output can be stored in any triple store.
Yeah, that's a good point.
So you can use your triple store, you can use your neighbor's triple store, you can use whatever you want to be using in your enterprise. There's another question here. This one is easy. Does your product provide a Sparkle endpoint? Rick, that one's for you.
Yes.
Easy
it's
question.
actually part of the interface, and you can write from the web, execute SPARQL statements.
Okay. Another question. You mentioned that we can now search based on asking a question. Is this possible using SharePoint? SharePoint has some limitations of its own. But I think even in our, and Rick, you'll tell me if I'm saying something stupid here, but even in existing versions of Semaphore for SharePoint, the process of describing the content and being able to search it effectively is vastly improved because of the better metadata.
Yeah, I mean, it all comes down to how good the classification is and gets tagged in SharePoint. So that will be improved. Now, asking a question, so natural language search. In other words, everybody's familiar, I'm sure, with our search as you type. Search as you type is more of a prefix type search to look for terms and alternative terms in your model and then start your search based on a concept. And we also have the ability to do concept-based lookups in our models so that you can actually ask natural language questions to the semantic enhancement server and retrieve back a list of possible concepts that are related to that question.
Which leads to another question, actually, where someone has asked if there have been changes to the Semantic Enhancement Server API.
And the answer to that question is there have been no changes at all. The API will remain exactly the same, and the index will be built from the triple store instead of the ontology server.
Okay, let me see if there are any additional questions. How about backwards compatibility with customized rules created in the publisher in version 3?
That's a great question. So we have aimed to have 100% backward compatibility with our rules built in Semaphore 3. Of course, rules can be built in all kinds of interesting ways, so hopefully we don't run into any problems, but that was our goal, and we've have all kinds of automated tests verifying such.
Okay, so in general, the answer is yes, it is backwards compatible, but that's always qualified because we don't know exactly how those rules have been built. So that's something that we should probably talk about offline. The other question I've been asked here is there documentation available so that we can take a look prior to taking the plunge? We have extensive documentation on Semaphore 4. It is available on our customer portal. If you have access to the customer portal, you'll be able to look at quite a bit of documentation. I would suggest that you contact your account executive to see about the information that you need for moving forward. And with that, I think we've answered all the questions. Let me just take a quick look. Oh, here's an interesting one. Would you offer some software to compare version 3 versus version 4 search results so that we can test? Well, I think we could do that now by simply creating importing a model into Semaphore 4 and running the classification and looking at the results. The ability, one of the key differentiating factors of Semaphore is the traceability in the classification results and in the model, so that you can see exactly what rules fired and why a certain result classified in a certain way. You should be able to compare those very easily. Rick, do you have anything to add to that?
No, I think you covered it.
Okay. Do we have rule ordering in version 4? Do we know what rule ordering is?
I guess I'm not sure exactly what's meant by that.
Priority sequencing.
Priority sequencing.
Okay. Naveen, we'll get back to you on that.
Yeah, I think we need to take that offline.
I think we need to take that one offline. And yes, Mary, we can open 2 versions or 2 models at once in. Can we open 2 models at once in the Workbench? I know that you can do it in the modeler.
Yeah, so in the new Semaphore web interface, you can open a model and then, I mean, essentially you open a new browser tab and you can open another model, so you can have as many models open as you want.
Okay, and with that, I think we've answered all the questions. Mary and Naveen, we have some stuff to get back to you offline with, and I thank you very much for attending the webinar today. If you have any additional questions, please feel free to contact your account executive or to contact us at info@smartlogic.com. Thank you very much, and have a good day.